We're excited to talk about the Bible and want to be faithful to examine as much of the text as possible. Unfortunately, we can't cover everything in a Sunday sermon, and lots of study and material get left on the cutting room floor. These episodes are our attempt to continue the conversation and cover as much of the Bible as we can. So welcome to the cutting room floor.
So, Book of Ruth. Kevin's got some good questions. I'll let Kevin kick it off this time.
I was just saying to him, I'd like to go over the two terms, hesed,
Oh,
and how that flows throughout the whole thing, and dive deeper into Kinsman Redeemer.
okay, great. Well, hesed or hesed or however you say it is appropriate. Yeah, it's probably there's probably some phlegm in there somewhere. It means loyal love or covenant loyal
Unconditional
love
love.
or unfailing love. I think
Enduring
there's
commitment.
that's right. There's lots of ways to define that, and I think you see that word a lot in the Psalms, for instance.
Right.
But you're beginning to see the characteristic of not only God but also those who are faithful covenant partners who are living out this this word or this idea. Here I'm typing in real quick in my wrong one, in my dictionary here, my Logos software, to see if we can pull up anything else that would be pertinent or relevant. No, that's not what I typed in. There we go. That didn't go as quickly as I thought it would. Kept changing it. Yeah, loyalty and faithfulness, love and mercy, and action would be the three branches that are contained within the idea of hesed. So, love and faith, or loyalty and faithfulness, obviously it's not just a fleeting emotion. Love and mercy, then are talking about the good that you will for another. And then action. It's not just a feeling, it is love expressed through concrete deeds of rescue, support, and kindness. And that's when it's most utilized. It's in reference a lot of times to God's covenant love for us. And I'm looking here. Here's how English Bibles have translated it: loving kindness, steadfast love, unfailing love, loyal love, mercy, and grace. And I want to say the first time we're really encountering it might be in Ruth.
Really?
Yeah. Let me see. I could be wrong.
We
Let's.
kind of see it when Moses is
Oh,
talking to
you're
God,
right. I think you might be right. It might be contained there.
and God talks about his enduring faithfulness.
Which would be very interesting because Ruth is riffing off of the way God describes himself. So for that theme to arise in Ruth.
Would be interesting.
Yeah.
But if that were right, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
But it's wrong.
Oh, okay, never mind.
It shows up first in Genesis 19:19. It is spoken by Abraham's nephew Lot, after he is rescued from the doomed city of Sodom. Behold, your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have shown me great hesed in saving my life. This is what Lot says about God. That's fascinating.
That is very fascinating. And not entirely removed from this plot line of Ruth either.
From this plot line at all, actually. That's wow, yeah. That's a good pull. We're going to talk about that. I know at some point.
For sure.
And then, of course, we know Exodus 34, like you mentioned, Kevin, where God is announcing his name, Yahweh, and he's saying who he is, what he's like. And loyal love is one of, or unfailing love is one of his chief characteristics.
Right.
This is one of those words that's really, really important for understanding.
And you just read those definitions, if translating to English, and it's one of those words that's so much bigger than just those little words that they try to make it.
Well, and then love, too, it's like, we love, you've heard this, I'm sure, before.
Right.
We love tacos. Pizza. Yeah, we love pizza. We love our dog. We love our wives, our spouses. So I think this is not that kind of junk drawer English word love. This is a particular indication of a kind of love.
And I think like one step further than that too. Is like we can make the distinction between the way that I love an object or a food or any other sort of familial relationship can hold love, but it is different based on the association with the other person. But this all had to do with less of the object of the recipient of the love, but pointing out that it was tied to an action.
Yeah.
That it's not just something you possess towards someone else, but it's something that's enacted towards someone else, which I think is very interesting.
Really important, in fact, because love, again, is not an emotion as much as it's willing the good of the other. There's a volitional, I'm taking a step with what I'm not just what I'm feeling, but with what I'm going to do as a result of that. And I think it would have to, at some level, come down to a belief set or a way of being that's more than just I want to express some kind of pleasure towards you. You know, that I'm pleased with you in some way. It's not just that.
The word enduring to put on God means it's not just, I love you right now, but it's forever.
I love that. That's a good. Well, and I was just sitting here thinking, Lot's expression of this in his story is in spite of Lot's like dragging his feet a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not even that like God's compelled to love Lot just because Lot's so good or something like that. It's that Lot is like almost not gonna comply, almost not gonna take off from the city. And yet God still shows his faithfulness in action by providing the angels, bringing them out, all the things. I think it's really interesting. So so as it relates to the Book of Ruth, absolutely, this is a theme that I think you would have to say is like writ large over the whole book. Like it kind of encompasses the thing, even though God is not really talked about a lot. Like clearly, what's being shown through the narrative itself is that God's hesed, his loyal love, is being applied to these two people. One being a Moabite, which is kind of the scandal, because again we have the curse or the exclusion of the Moabites from Deuteronomy chapter 25. So the fact that he's showing his hesed because what he's doing is bringing Ruth into the covenant family and into covenant partnership with him, which is an act of hesed. It is love displayed. And it's what Boaz does. It's what Ruth does. And, I think to a lesser extent, Naomi as well.
I do have a question about that because I do want to talk more about the Kinsman Redeemer. I love what seems to be happening in the narrative is, like you said, in Deuteronomy, what chapter was it?
I think it's 25.
25, not even to the 10th generation or whatever, the exclusion of the Moabites. But there is a bringing in of this Moabitess woman into the household and all this stuff. And I think it's a beautiful picture of that, it is not an exclusive group that is called. It is one meant to draw others in. And the timing of it and all that is so amazing. But it does make me scratch my head at the beginning of it because it's like, oh, well, towards the end of the Book of Ruth, then we know Boaz is an eligible kinsman redeemer, but there's one who's more eligible than he is, but he's unwilling.
Right.
Is that because, is it a financial thing? He's like, because you had mentioned that, can he even swing supporting this mother-in-law, this woman, and then, other family members and all that stuff. Maybe he says, I can't. Or is it a personal prejudice thing? Like, I'm not going to marry the Moabite woman. Yeah. I've heard that played a few times. Sure. That may be an element in it. And I've tossed that back and forth. But then if I look back at the very beginning of the narrative, is Boaz doing this thing that no other Israelite man is doing? Well, clearly not. At the very beginning, it opens with, in the days when the judges were ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab. He and his wife and his 2 sons. The man's name was Elimelech, and he marries Naomi and all that stuff. So already we have Naomi and Elimelech's sons marrying Moabite women.
Right.
And there's no grand celebration of, well, look, they're bringing them in.
Yeah.
And I don't think the narration is intending to do that either.
Right.
But then also, are we supposed to be more inclined to view what they did as like, oh, they ought not to have done it? This is a real question. I'm not.
Yeah.
What do I do with that? Because according to Deuteronomy 25, the drama behind that had to do with a pullback into idolatry.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't some sort of like, well, like I think there's multiple things going on for, and part of that being like the origin of the Moabite with Lot, and it's like an incestuous
Yep.
thing. That's no good. So there's kind of a like, hey, don't mix there. But
Yeah.
also there seems to be this proactive thing happening within the Book of Ruth that does invite the Moabite back in. And I think that's the beauty of the book. But what's happening here at the beginning? You know, is there something to be celebrated in the conduct of these two guys who just mysteriously die? Or are they perhaps participants in a callback to what's going on in Deuteronomy in a, hey, they're living in the land of, they're in Moab. Are we supposed to assume, is this family living up to the charge of being faithful to Yahweh? Or are they, what do I do with that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'd probably need to back that up with some
Okay.
with some scholarly commentary on that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think what the narrator is doing is creating tension for us.
Okay.
We're supposed to feel tension in the same way that Abraham going to Egypt creates in us.
Which is kind of the way that I'm wondering, like, I want to definitely approach it in a, like, historical sense,
Right.
but also if I play the characters allegorically, would I say, hey, here's a couple of men at the beginning of the story who are living not in the place that
Right.
they're meant to be hanging out in, marrying the women who they've been told not to, and then they live these very short lives and perish, versus Boaz, who also is a very interesting character, who I want to talk about later, who seems to be in pursuit and in favor of God and is bringing people in, and there's all this, you know,
Yeah.
life and abundance for everybody.
Right.
Is that the contrast that's being held at the beginning of the story and the end?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the narrator is being really specific with the details. Again, this is a really tight narrative, and it's a very short book. You know, blink and you miss it kind of book. So I think all the details are there on purpose, and I think we're supposed to be a little suspicious of the character of this family who's chosen to go to Moab of all places. Now that's not a perfect equation.
Yeah.
Because like David goes and lives in Gath.
Totally.
You know, in the Philistine region. So like.
And this has happened before when when Abraham's family originally goes into Egypt in response to a famine.
Right.
And so it's kind of in line with what's happened before.
Right.
So I guess like saying it's a very tight narrative. If you're following previous themes, it would inform you of, well, what's going on with these guys. But I think it's a little tougher to say that like, well, they were doing a bad thing and we know that because maybe it's not that.
I don't know if it's that cut and dry as much as it's more like, is this okay?
Yeah.
Like, are we supposed to be doing this? And I think the law would say no. Like we need to stick with those who are Israelites, and foreigners are allowed in, but they first have to become Israelites.
Right. Which is what this story does so well.
Which is the whole point. Which is the whole contrast, I think, of chapter 1 versus chapter 4, for instance. So I don't know that I don't know that we could make full or final conclusions as much as we're supposed to be suspicious of who these people really, really are. And we'll let the story dictate that as it goes on. But just utilizing the details at the beginning of the story, I think we're supposed to be like, they married Moabite women. They went because of a famine. Well, how long does the famine last?
Right.
You know?
It would be safe to assume that they assimilate into
Yes.
a lifestyle, and
Correct.
the implication would be religious practice that
I think
isn't
so.
honoring to their God.
I think so.
Okay.
And I would proof that utilizing the rest of chapter 1, where when Ruth is clinging to Naomi and not wanting to leave her,
Right.
a part of what Naomi says to
That's
Ruth
in contrast.
is get rid of your gods.
Uh-huh.
So that's a part of what the instruction is, which means that there probably was some kind of spiritual assimilation
Right.
that had occurred beforehand.
And that makes Ruth's posture that much more like we spent a lot of time, was it last week or the week before, pointing out that these are people of noble character.
Right.
And if the implication is, well, these other idol practices are taken up in this household, they need to be put aside.
Right.
Ruth is taking on the posture of someone who's putting those aside and taking up the name of Yahweh.
Correct. At least she is.
Yes.
I don't know. Can't fully say if Naomi or Elimelech were doing that necessarily, but I think again, with the context of the Moabite women, the scheme that they are, kind of the tools of by the Moabite men, they're there to seduce the men sexually, but for a purpose, not just for that purpose.
Right.
The purpose is to sway them to serve other gods. And so I think that the marriage thing there, it's supposed to create some tension in us.
It's informing, so we can't say this is what they did wrong.
Correct.
But we are meant to hold them up in contrast.
Yeah, like you said, the book itself doesn't condemn them for marrying the Moabite women.
Correct. So it
seems weird.
And it's like, because the narrative is doing something else besides trying to necessarily reinforce like the Mosaic law here.
That's what I was saying.
You know what I mean? Like that, it does that by product of the narrative, though,
not by, hey, these guys broke the law. That's
Correct.
why they died.
Correct.
Yeah, it doesn't do that.
It doesn't do that.
I like that.
Yeah. If it did, I think we could plant our flag a lot more firmly on this or that conclusion. But I think we're at least supposed to be suspicious in the same way we're supposed to be suspicious of someone like Jonah.
So I think what the narrative is then doing is it's very tight, not in a legal sense, but in an allegiance sense.
Yes,
Okay.
I would agree with that statement.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
That helps me sit in this first chapter.
Yeah, and of course it's just a well-told story. I mean, we get the main players right out of the gate. We get a tight introduction about who they are. There's not a lot of extra fluff to it, and then straight off into the story we go.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot intended in this opening, couple paragraphs.
Yeah.
But I think a part of it definitely is that like is this okay?
Yeah.
We don't really know how to feel about this.
Yeah.
Who are these people?
Yeah.
What are they like?
And I guess especially for the Israelite reader.
Yeah.
If your first introduction to it, I have no idea what that would look like, was a story of a family who is in this place and doing all these things, and they would maybe turn their noses up a little bit. But by the end,
yes.
By the end, what a book!
Yes.
What a book. So, what was the other term that you wanted to talk about, Kat?
Kinsman Redeemer.
Kinsman Redeemer, right. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's why I brought that up, because these early men in the story, I guess Kinsman Redeemer has to do with widowship, not about bringing in other non-Israelite groups, right? Because the Kinsman Redeemer, that normally happens within Mosaic law.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
So
we're dealing with Israelites in that sense.
That was my question. Sorry, I had to clarify. Is it odd that I don't know another term for it. I'll say legal courtesy is even offered to these Moabite women if they're non-Israelite?
Yeah, there's no obligation.
Okay.
I mean, like, I think there's a realm in which a foreigner or stranger can be brought into the nation of Israel via marriage. It just has to be done in the right order. Would probably be the way to say it. It has to be done according to the law. Like the Egyptians that came with the Israelites, they became Israelite by allegiance and by loyalty to Yahweh, by their pledge to Him, and so then they can be brought into the family through that realm. So that's on the table for any person. But again, any person has to first have met the requirement of hesed, covenant loyalty, love for Yahweh. So hold on, I may have lost your question.
My question is according to Mosaic law, for the widow, then there is this kinsman redeemer thing that happens for the sake of like their namesake not dying out, and
And the
their
land.
provision and the land and
the
all that
land,
stuff. So it's a provisional act on for the benefit of the widow, for as strange as it sounds.
Yes.
Yeah, and
very
it does
different
sound
than our
strange.
culture. It's very different for our culture because we marry for romance.
Right.
We're not marrying for legal status because our our culture and our country, and we could say the West predominantly, we're not marrying for honor shame. We're not marrying for legality purposes. If like when I was in India, the question you would ask, if like Indian to Indian, they would ask, "Are you marrying for romance or are you marrying for family?"
Oh wow.
So that's a live question like to this day.
Well, I would even press it one further. For family or romance in like this instance, maybe it seems more distant and strange to us the more access you have to sort of an equal opportunity between male and female.
Correct.
Where in this sense, if you did not have a male head of the household or heir to take care of it, you're destitute.
Correct.
So
you don't have the same legal standing or abilities, same opportunities.
Sets up Ruth as, a real underdog character because she's a Moabite. Yep. So I think maybe to
check box.
Yeah.
Number one, she's a Moabite. Number two, she's a widow. Number three, and she's attached herself to another widow. Yeah. Number four.
So I guess my question is, can we assume, or is it even legally upheld, I guess, in Mosaic law, if someone is widowed and they're like an Israelite woman, would they be like, someone got to take care of this lady?
Yep.
Since she's a Moabite, would they be like, hey, we can wash our hands of it? She's not bound by our law. Or would it be implied, hey, no, her name is under this household, someone ought to? Or are we just supposed to kind of sense that tension that she might be more inclined to be dropped?
Yeah. So the question, or how about this? The context would have to be that Mahlon and Chilion have a brother that we don't know about.
Oh, right.
Does that make sense? It can't be a cousin necessarily. Like, it needs to be within this clan now. It needs to be with the clan, but it needs to be within this family. The Kinsman Redeemer has to be within the family. I think, now I don't know.
Basically, right?
Boaz, probably really distant is what it sounds like. Because we don't have any kind of like, that would all be speculation about who he is as far as which family relation he is. We just know in some way he's related to Elimelech. So like, I think if we were to follow the law, I'm shooting a little bit from the hip here. So if we need to make corrections, we can do that later. But as I understand it at this moment, in order for Ruth to be redeemed from the Kinsman Redeemer standpoint, and we're talking Ruth now, because what's interesting is that Ruth's Kinsman Redeemer story isn't merely for her; it also redeems Naomi.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a twofold situation going on, because Boaz is tied in via Elimelech to Naomi, but Naomi's also an Israelite.
Like Naomi says, I can't have children that they're going to grow up and be your spouse.
Correct, because that would be the Kinsman Redeemer.
Well,
would be Naomi's children for Ruth. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Because she even says, like, would you wait till they were grown? Like, none of this is possible.
Right.
But I guess, like, because I know, like, there's part of the, don't harvest the edge of your field is for the provision of the widow,
the outcast,
the foreigner, which gets super interesting because we got to talk more about what's going on in the story. But, I guess my question is, what is the cutoff line for Naomi's an older woman, is what it tells us. Yes. She has sons, they die, her husband dies.
Right.
This story
They're old enough to be married.
It doesn't imply that, like, well, someone ought to marry Naomi.
Right.
They just assume, or it seems like the assumption is, well, she will be taken care of by her in-laws.
Correct.
So that she even puts on offer that, like, hey, girls, go back to your own land. What is...
Again, she's old. She's old enough that she won't be able to have children, so the only hope is through Ruth, right?
True.
That's how I read the story.
But I guess, I mean, I'm not trying to do this just to like poke at the story or anything. This is a legitimate
No,
question.
let's find out.
Why is it that if Boaz is a relation to Elimelech, that Ruth is eligible to be part of the Kinsman Redeemer thing, and Naomi is just off to the side?
Yeah.
And we could obviously say, like, well, she's a young lady and all that stuff. Ruth is very old. If
Yeah.
we're talking legality,
Yeah.
and maybe is it because because Naomi is old enough that she won't have an heir, part of the Kinsman Redeemer is meant to produce an heir. So it wouldn't go to Naomi, it would go to the daughter-in-law? Is that what's happening?
Well, because she's already a part of the family via marriage the first time.
Okay.
So but she's not an Israelite.
Right.
So, and the text is very clear to say that she's not an Israelite.
Uh-huh.
She's not an Israelite in the way that matters, which would be the legality sense. And now she's lost her inheritance to the land because it doesn't route through her; it routes through whoever she married. I think it's Mahlon. I think
Okay.
Mahlon was her spouse. So this is getting tedious.
It is. We're getting real legally.
I
So
want to make sure I'm saying it right. So she has potential to be redeemed,
uh-huh.
but she doesn't necessarily have rights to redemption in the same way that Naomi does, because Naomi comes in as an Israelite, whereas Ruth is a widow who's still a Moabite.
Right. Okay. I want to get away from this like legal talk, but I do have another question. Is it also then, apart from an heir needing to be produced, that like if it does have to do with land and possessions, because Ruth is a widow, does that mean that whatever it is that Elimelech and Naomi have is then given to their sons and their wives? If their sons die, everything doesn't just defect back to Naomi?
Well, no, that's it. So that's actually in chapter 4. What occurs is it's not that it's Ruth's child, even though it is,
Right.
but like legally speaking,
When we're talking about an heir.
correct.
But I'm talking about possession and land and stuff.
Well, all of that, it's as though it becomes Elimelech's again. So whoever the heir is, which would be, who's Jesse's father? Obed.
Yeah.
Obed. Obed is now, via Boaz's redemption,
Uh-huh.
the owner of this land, even though Boaz is the owner of the land.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah. It's a little complicated.
Yeah.
Is that why the first Kinsman Redeemer was hesitant to take this on?
Oh, 100%. Because he doesn't end up with the profit share in the end, if you want to put it that way. Like,
It is an act of, as weird as it is to say, it is an act of charity towards this family
100%.
member.
Yeah.
Which, there's so much in that.
Yeah.
We will leave the legal talk, but it makes me also think about like year of Jubilee and all that stuff, and making sure
there's a
that
whole-
land possession goes back to
Correct.
families and all that stuff. It's all in there.
Speaking of Jubilee, I had the question, this practice of the Kinsman Redeemer, was it practiced, or was it like the year of Jubilee that really wasn't ever really truly practiced?
I think it was supposed to be practiced because there's also the not. It gets brought up a few times when it doesn't get honored. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. And in fact, this is a part of the rationale of why the exile takes place. Is it's not only that the Sabbaths weren't honored. Well, what do we mean by that? Well, we mean the Sabbaths that culminate in a Sabbath year, which would be the year of Jubilee, where you don't do any work at all.
And like you said, the properties go back to the original.
They go back to the original people. Slaves get free.
changed.
So
Bingo,
if people
bingo.
aren't doing the Kinsman Redeemer thing, then things aren't going back into the proper hands
Correct.
and all that stuff. And then there's like, a debt to the land of it needing its rest, but there's also a weird imbalance of like justice and classism and all stuff that happens
Yeah.
if it doesn't get set right.
Yes.
So weird.
Bingo. Okay. Well, I want to make sure that we're tying a bow on this. I know that you want to move on, but you get it. You
Yeah.
think you've got the answer until someone asks the second question.
Yeah.
And then that's
Yeah.
why. Okay. So Ruth does have legal potential to be married. However, she is a Moabite, which makes the whole thing complicated. Okay, so that's a huge part of the issue, is that because she's a Moabite, because Mahlon I think it's Mahlon is her husband, because Mahlon goes outside of the covenant family to find a wife, it complicates, it makes the law as it stands hard to enforce, because now, in order to redeem Elimelech's line, Mahlon's line, you have to marry a non-Israelite.
Yeah.
So that's where the sticky part of this is all coming in. It's not that Ruth doesn't have any legal status or claim; she does, but that's almost immediately forfeited by the fact that she's a Moabite. And there's a reason we call her a Moabite in the book so many times, to create that narrative tension. It's like we have to keep reminding ourselves, yes, she was married to an Israelite, but she's a Moabite.
Yeah.
That's no good. They're not allowed to come in for until the 10th generation.
Yes.
That's the whole point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm hoping we explained that well enough.
No,
okay.
That's really good. That's really good. I do think it's very interesting, though, that if we have a guy who is maybe in a legal sense unwilling to, I think we could safely assume in a legal sense he's unwilling to, and then perhaps in a, what would we say, ethnic sense, unwilling to.
Yeah.
And then Boaz is. And we know that he's a wealthy dude.
Yes.
But also his willingness to take in Ruth is, I think there's more to talk about around who is Boaz.
Yeah.
As far as like, well, why? Is he just a nice guy?
Or is...
I think there's more than that.
Question.
There's more than that, I think, because if part of what he offers her, in what chapter is it when he's like, glean in my fields and go behind my young men. They'll drop things for you. You can take it up. Don't just do the outside edge.
Yep.
He's aware of the law.
Yep.
He's aware of who it is for.
Yep.
He sees her in the field. Why is Boaz inclined to even take notice of who it is who's at the edge of his field?
Yeah.
And I think it's because, and why is he also seemingly more willing to marry this Moabite woman than this other guy? Boaz has if I'm getting this right, has a mixed parentage already.
Yeah, I mean, in his lineage.
In his lineage, because who is Boaz's parents?
That's a good question.
Because this is, I don't know if this works timeline wise, but I think I might get this wrong. Are we allowed to be wrong when we do this?
Yeah. We are.
I think his mom is. Her name is leaving me. You have the internet.
Yeah. I'm looking it up right now.
What's her name?
Hold on.
Not the one that was the prostitute from the spies.
Yeah.
Rahab?
Yeah.
Rahab?
Different Rahab, same Rahab.
It would be the same.
Okay.
It would be the same Rahab.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Isn't
And
there
she's
more
married to Salmon?
Yeah, Salmon.
Salmon and Rahab.
Yeah.
So is Boaz already having in his mind, like, hey, you got to care for the foreigner because we've already taken in a foreigner who took us in
I see what you're saying.
in our time of need or whatever. This might be what it is that's on Boaz's mind. He might be more inclined to be aware of the foreigner. Maybe?
I would have to say yes. I don't know. Let's see here, because the issue we have going on is, let's see here.
His mother was Rahab, yeah.
Yeah, the timeline though is a little bit.
That's what
a little bit difficult to jump over.
Because I look at the genealogy and I'm like, oh, Rahab, that's very interesting. And I think about like, wait, Joshua and Jericho and all that stuff, that was farther back. We're in the time of the judges right now.
It's at least 100 years before.
Is that like they say the father of? Sometimes that means like great-great-grandfather.
It could,
so
yeah,
it could be
exactly.
mother.
Yeah.
Exactly. It could be a selective genealogy, in other words.
Which,
that's what Matthew does.
even if that is the case, I think that would still lead me to the same conclusion,
Yeah.
that would inform me of the character of Boaz isn't just arbitrary.
I would agree.
I think it is designed. I think it's a beautiful setup so that a kinsman redeemer can do what is meant to be accomplished, even for the foreigner and the widow.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%, which is why I think why the man of great standing doesn't just mean wealth. I think there is a
Quality of character.
I think there's a quality of
Yeah.
character in mind. I
Yeah.
think that's a double. It's a double entendre there.
Yeah.
It means both things at the same time, and I think that's a part of it. Is that we're looking at not only Ruth's character through the first couple chapters, we're now also seeing, oh, here's another noble guy.
Yeah.
I think the whole purpose of the book is to get them married, and we get to King David.
Yeah.
So the the narrative thrust forward would be to point out that these two people are compatible with one another.
Yeah.
In the right kind of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
in my reading about this while we're still talking, strictly speaking, the closer relative of Boaz could have used her nationality, Ruth's nationality, as an excuse to ignore her. But because of Ruth's fierce loyalty to Naomi and her adoption of Israel's God, and because Boaz chose the higher spirit of the law, which would be mercy and family preservation, over a rigid exclusionary reading, her status as Mahlon's widow was honored. So that would be like the panache to that statement there. So it is that she could have been redeemed, but also she's a Moabite. And he can buy the land clearly, but can he then take care of
Yeah.
2 additional mouths to feed, along with his obligation,
Yeah.
which would be to have an heir
Yeah.
that would not be his.
Yeah. Yeah. So there is a can he and a is he willing.
I think both are on the table,
Yeah.
which is why the unsandaled like title that you would receive
Yeah.
is such a social
Yeah.
and legal detriment to your name.
Do they actually keep the other person's sandal?
I don't know. I want to think so.
I want to think so because, like, if you make a deal with somebody, then you can be like, "Bro, I got your shoe on my foot right now."
Yeah, this is
like,
mine.
It's like we shook hands on it, but it's like on my foot still.
Yes.
But it also makes me think about, I mean, we'll get to this more later, but with Tamar, and that, her story is horrifying, but like that there is some sort of, she doesn't have a sandal. I think she has like a ring and a staff.
Yeah, staff and a cloak, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe signet ring too, yeah.
Yeah, and like, who's the father of this child?
Right.
It's the one who possesses this, There wasn't an exchanging of sandals that happened,
Right.
but she had her, I don't know, collateral or whatever you would call it.
That's a good way
and
to put
an identifier of a
Yes.
deal that ought to have been done.
Right.
So that unsandaled, it makes me think more and more about like, okay, wait, does that say something about the quality of the character because they're unwilling?
Yeah.
Or is it also meant to be a dishonor in like, you can't take care of the rest of your family? Because what if it is a legal or financial thing and he's like, I can't.
Yeah.
Is that meant to be a dishonoring thing?
That's a good question. I don't know, but I think a part of what's like a part of the way the system is working, even within the Book of Ruth, is that okay? Well, let's say the person who has to cannot. Well, then they become the unsandaled. But what if there are other options? Well, then I think that we don't have to ascribe necessarily the unsandaled to the person who has to but cannot, because if I remember right, the way that the law is written regarding the unsandaled, regarding the Kinsman Redeemer stuff, is that then the widow remains that. It's not that she can then find another option, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So it's like the detriment that, how about this? Even if he's unwilling, the social stigma still has to stick. Even if he can't, the social stigma has to stick. I think is the way that I would interpret that.
Okay.
but if he can't, hopefully there's others who can. And I think that that would probably lessen the social stigma of it. Yeah. In the same way that, like, probably in today's society, something like this works out in, like, adoption.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably the closest thing that we've got
Okay.
in our modern day. It's like, well, maybe the brother of, of a deceased someone can't take the kids, but grandparents can.
Okay.
And yeah, we might go, well, we wish the brother would have, but it's good that someone in the family is at all.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So it's probably similar or akin to that.
Right. Okay.
But as it relates to the law,
Uh-huh.
you know, it's kind of a different realm
Yeah.
to talk in.
Yeah. I like framing it that way. Because it does imply that there's not just a legality to it, but there's a you ought to,
Yes.
for this person's sake.
Because again, what is the law trying to tell us?
Yeah.
It's trying to bring us into the wisdom
Right.
of doing good.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
For others and not
Yeah.
just ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be about, well, the land has to get back to the family name, right? Like, well, that is accomplished, but for the sake of the family.
Yeah.
You know, and in the same way that, like, well, the Kinsman Redeemer makes this happen, but it is for the sake of the preservation of the individual.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
It's
The legality becomes the means of human
Correct.
flourishing.
Correct. And that's what laws are supposed to do.
Right.
Wise laws, which is what the law is coming from God. It's supposed to be wisdom that we live into. And of course, we've talked this ad nauseum, Christians' relationship to the law. But that is the way we're supposed to treat it.
Right.
Is not that it's like, oh, well, we're just done with that because of the new covenant. No, we're supposed to read it and see God's wisdom embedded within it, and how it does create a system of human flourishing, which is what God wants in the first place. It's why he installs the first humans in a garden. Like, he wants flourishing to occur.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, like old Jewish law is such a weird, sticky
And it's a strange thing
to
that
chew on.
us modern Gentiles are like almost experts, or we're attempting to be.
But I feel
You
like experts, but when I'm reading and thinking through these things, I fall into the same trap every time, which is to stop at accomplishing the law,
Right.
but forgetting what it is that the law is trying to accomplish.
Right. Right.
And it happens again and again and again and
There's a
again.
spirit in it.
Ask
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah.
Does the Book of Ruth, well, okay, Judges, it says every man did what was right in his own eyes. So basically that meant they walked away from the laws.
Oh yeah.
And so in Ruth, there's all these laws that are being followed, and it's kind of
Correct.
a contrast.
Yes, it's meant to be that on purpose.
Okay.
And this is why we keep bringing up the close of Exodus, for instance. Why can't Moses enter the tabernacle? Well, we need something to come to our rescue. In this case, it's the book of Leviticus. It's the same for the book of Judges. We get this horrible statement that every man does right what is right in his own eyes. But then we open the book to find that there's actually, it's not quite as dire as we're making it out to seem. It is dire in a national sense, but maybe in a microcosm, people are still faithful to Yahweh. And it turns out that God is preserving. We don't know this word yet. We won't know it until 1 Kings chapter 19, I think. But it turns out that God is preserving a remnant. And the idea of remnant is going to become vitally important to our theme of exile.
Yeah, we could have easily have just written remnant across the wall.
It would have been just as much an
Just
appropriate
another
moniker.
example of his hesed
Bingo.
during love.
Bingo. That he's arranging all of this and working all of this out.
That's good.
Yep.
That's good.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm just reading about the social stigma of the house of the unsandaled. The shame didn't stop when the meeting ended. Deuteronomy states that from that day forward, the man's entire family line would carry a humiliating nickname in Israel: the house of him who had his sandal pulled off.
You think it would be a humiliating thing that, like, if you don't give up your shoe, we're taking it from you?
Yeah. Well, and again, if we're tying this in to the euphemism of uncovering the feet,
Yeah.
there is a
Oh, yeah. You're right.
there's a a procreative element that this is supposed to indicate, that they did not fulfill their role to do God's original command, which is to be fruitful and multiply, with the people that God commanded them to do that with. And it is legal and it is okay in this context and in this culture. So the community would then think of this person as they're selfish, right? Because they don't want to do it.
Right.
Or if they can't do it, they're not willing to sacrifice to preserve the family line.
So who gets his title? The first Kinsman Redeemer?
Yeah, it would be whichever kinsman, depending on the context, right? Because like if there's not 6 brothers, let's just say there's one brother. Well, it just happens to be that brother, and let's say he already has a family, which is kind of what's on, like that's normal. That would be the normative practice that each person is taking. They have a wife and a family.
Yeah.
So the fact that if it's just one brother, they have this family, this whole family is marked by this identity. And it would probably take time for that to be redeemed in some way. You would hope one of your ancestors later on would redeem your shame from this.
But by taking the Kinsman Redeemer title, Boaz took that shame away.
Correct. Because Boaz, and that's...
Go ahead.
we're getting ahead of it, aren't we? That's okay. It's okay because we can go back and talk about it. But yeah, I think that's a part of why Boaz's redemption is so powerful, because he doesn't. He is in line to be a kinsman redeemer, but he doesn't carry the weight of being the immediate one.
Right.
He's not the first. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I get exactly what you're trying to say because we've been over this in the series so far.
Right.
And I think Boaz fits the kind of theme we've seen so far, especially between brothers, where you have a lot of the first in line for inheritance is superseded by the second. Yep. And I think that he's following a pattern that the narrative's laid out the entire way through. And again, I think that points more towards, I think Boaz is such an interesting figure because he's so pointedly the right guy at the right place at the right time with the right inclination to notice this woman in his field. I just think that's very, very interesting because I think there's kind of two things that are happening in the narrative of Ruth. If we follow that same, setup that we did for, out of Exodus, Deuteronomy comes to our rescue. Out of Numbers, Leviticus comes to our rescue. Out of Judges, Ruth comes to our rescue. Yeah. We need a redeemer in two senses. Yeah. Ruth needs to be redeemed, and the nation of Israel needs to be redeemed.
Yes.
We get to see how Ruth is redeemed within the story, and it points us straight to King David, which is going to do this kind of national kingship. It gets us closer to ultimately the Messiah.
Correct. Well, as good as we can have it while we live on this side of Eden. Yeah. That's how the kingdom under David is pictured. Like this is as good as we can do it. And we've got a beneficent, monarch who isn't content to just be king. He almost acts like a priest a lot of times. Yeah. He's fulfilling the role that the king was written in the law to fulfill, unlike Saul.
Yeah. Yeah.
And almost every other one of them.
Yeah. Well, and himself included.
Which is of course the irony that leads us further in the story.
Yes. Because again, what are we looking for? We're looking for the snake crusher.
Yeah, we're looking for a true redeemer.
As good as David can be, he is not close to being able to redeem humanity. He might be able to do it as far as everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Someone's got to get this group of people back on track. Yeah. And he can only do it for a short amount of time as well.
Correct.
Even his successes don't last into his successor.
Nope.
But we'll get there when we get there. The point I wanted to get at is I brought this up to you a few times, and I will concede that I think you are right. I think this is interesting. Okay.
I think it's a part of the story.
Okay.
I do.
I was about to say you can cut it.
I don't think you're wrong.
Okay.
I don't think you're wrong
Cool. Fun fact. I think what makes Boaz interesting, if the point, I agree 100%, the point of the story is to point us to David. Why Perez? Why do we start counting from Perez? Yep. And you did a wonderful job putting the parallels between Perez's conception and Obed?
Obed's.
Wait,
no, Moab's.
Moab's.
Ruth's. Yeah.
Moab's conception and Perez's conception.
Right, that was it.
Yes.
and how both of their stories get redeemed or tied off through the Book of Ruth. I thought that was incredible. I was familiar with both, and the way that those tied together I thought was so great.
Yeah, I've
But
never seen that before.
years ago, so I love reading the end of Ruth when it says, when you do the 10 generations down,
Yeah.
and it lands us in David. And like we said before, Deuteronomy 25, there's not even to the 10th generation. Well, here's this Redeemer figure in King David who shows up at the right time to redeem a nation and be a king, the right king, or all that stuff. Genealogies are important. We always, when we come across them, we always get a little dry and jokey about how boring they can be. But a few years ago, I was reading Ruth, and I just had a little like tickle in my brain of like, oh wait, 10 generations from what? And we've touched on before, the Moabites come from Lot
Yep.
and the ambitions of his daughters in scheming incestually to have offspring. Their motives are warped, and that's the origin of the Moabite.
Yeah.
Well, that's contemporaneous with Abraham.
Yeah.
And I just think it's very interesting that if you count 10 generations from Abraham, 10 generations from the conception of the Moabite people, 10 generations from Abraham's side, well, we need a redeemer for the Moabite. And it lands you at Boaz. That's crazy.
So Boaz is
I
not.
was thinking something different.
So Boaz is not then just a redeemer because it's convenient.
He's on time.
That's
And for as great as that makes Boaz, I think that tells us something about our Redeemer.
Yes.
That he is on time. And we'll get on to all that as we get further into prophets and stuff. But
Yes. Yeah. I in other words, I think it's one of those details that buttresses the story, but it's not necessarily the story's intent to reveal.
100%. Yeah.
Which is why I didn't preach it necessarily.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. I think there is something to that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, I think that the point of the story is laid out because the genealogy is
Yeah.
from Perez to David.
I agree.
It doesn't say, hey, look how great this moment with Boaz and Ruth is.
Yeah.
It's a launching point it's meant to project us towards the next thing.
Yes.
It doesn't want us to land the plane here
Right.
at the story of Ruth and Boaz.
Right.
Because it's not over.
It's not
because
over.
again, the redemption story isn't about Ruth only.
Only correct.
This is the zoomed in scope of our problem that we have in Judges.
Yes.
So we're headed somewhere.
Well, and you pointed this out multiple times as we've been talking. The story does this.
Yeah.
It will continue to do that. It'll widen out to talk about the nation, and then it'll hone in on someone. And it keeps doing that, and that's what we're seeing here in Judges. At the end of Judges, on into Ruth as well.
Yeah.
We've done a widening out, and now we're back pinpointed again to what God is doing through a particular family.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the conception of Moab, it made me think the Moabites became a problem for the Israelites.
Yeah.
Just as much as for Abraham, there was Ishmael and Isaac.
Yeah.
And Abraham didn't want to wait on God and trust him for the promise that he had made.
Such a good pull.
And the Ishmaelites became the modern Arabs that are still causing problems.
And this is the what's so fascinating too about even that, like even contained in that story, is that we've got two brothers who are at odds with one another. Yeah. We've got two sisters with Lot who are connected and unified, but for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So you've got all these like parallels that are running all throughout the story, and the beauty I think of each one of these stories is that obviously not the beauty of their conflict, but the beauty of the later stories is that they are reflecting back on these earlier stories, and they're taking the types or the concepts of these earlier stories, and they're finding ways God is finding ways to redeem those former stories through this current story that God is writing and telling through these people.
Isn't that
It's
something
fascinating.
the Bible Project points out, that things keep happening and God
That sounds like them.
successively, yeah.
That sounds like them. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, that's a great pull, Kevin. In the same way that the Moabites had been issues for the Israelites and find redemption in this story, Boaz is able to find redemption or I think you know what I'm
Yeah,
trying to say.
yeah.
Another layer of redemption
Yeah.
maybe in Abraham's own line through this.
Yeah, and I do want to push back on one thing just a little bit, Kevin, though. Like if we look at uh, Ishmael and Isaac and be like, okay, well, we have the descendants of Ishmael, and it's still a problem today or whatever. I have some pushback against that. I don't think that's like a great
It's some
framework.
not of.
Yeah. Because, I mean, even post that, then we have some immediate uses of the descendants of Ishmael who become, what is said about Moses' wife when she becomes the bridegroom of blood for
Yeah.
Moses, you know?
Yeah.
Even through the line of Ishmael, we have people who seem to be inclined to and unified to
Correct.
and allegiant to the God of Abraham,
Yes.
even though the family tree has done this, and there are repercussions from
Correct.
the family split, but there are also people who are in pursuit of servitude and allegiance to
Yahweh.
yeah
And what he's referring to is the priest of Midian, who would be a part of the Ishmaelite people. The Midianites would be a branch off of or a clan out of the Ishmaelites. And so what I find fascinating about that, whatever the final statement is on this, what I find fascinating is that God is concerned with the nation of Israel, but he's concerned with the nation of Israel for a particular purpose, not because he is concerned about nations per se.
yeah they are a means of reconciliation for the world. They are, how would you want to say it? Like
Tools.
yeah,
They're it's
blessed
utilitarian.
among but not above.
Correct.
Might be the way to say it.
Tools?
Yeah, tools. I mean, they're
They are the remnant, if we wanted to say humanity-wise,
yeah. Well,
within the biblical story.
yeah. Israel would be their goal, at least for instance. But what we find in the story over and over and over again is that Yahweh's willing to work with whoever wants to be a partner with him.
Yeah.
And he's in some way calling these people. Melchizedek, who the heck is this guy?
Yeah.
We don't even know who this guy is. He's a priest and a king of Salem, which is the Jebusites. That has nothing to do with Abraham or nobody.
Salem's Jerusalem, right?
Exactly. Where David is going to later
Yeah.
retrieve. He's going to take over that capital and actually knock the Jebusites out. But what's fascinating about these instances in the story is there's so many of them. They're not just an exception to the rule.
Yeah. Yeah.
They form a mosaic, a broader picture of, I think, what the story of God is in the first place, which is not just that I'm choosing these people, and because they're chosen and they're my nation, means they get a blank check to do anything they want to. It's that this nation is chosen for the purpose of bringing about the Messiah and being the people through which and to whom I speak to and reveal my nature to, so that they can then share that with the rest of the world. But it's not as though he's not also in some way speaking to other peoples, whether it's through the Israelites or through historical stories of these people. Like the Midianites probably have some kind of formation story about how they came about, and it had probably something to do with Ishmael and how he was the son of Abraham and blah blah blah, and that would all point back to Yahweh. But there's enough of these instances: Rahab, Ruth, the Midianites. Who the heck is Jethro? And what was Moses' wife's name? Zipporah.
Yeah.
Oh.
You've got all these characters in the story that come from not the nation of Israel, but are then included in the nation of Israel via God's hesed. We're back to this idea, his loyal love. If you'll be loyal to me, I'm loyal to you.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this, and I think it's that God is presenting himself in such a way that he's open enough that the ethnic identity is not, or the nation, the national boundary lines are not the thing that he's more concerned with. The thing he's more concerned with is the allegiance and the faith.
And I think it is summed up in, well, when we look at like Matthew chapter 1, and we get the genealogy of Jesus Christ, that it is,
Kevin was mentioning earlier,
that it's not this like air quotes, if you're listening, ethnically spotless line.
Right.
It is just littered with,
with unchosen people.
Yes.
But I think what we find out is that
everybody's right on time.
that's it. That's it. And so I think there's something really interesting about the 10-10 mapping on one another here. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Sweet.
But of course, what's interesting about Ruth's story is that she is not the 10th away.
Yeah.
Nor is her great grandson David.
But does it matter? Because, well, Wait, the great grandson David's not the 10th?
He's not the 10th
10th from Perez.
he's the 10th from Perez,
Uh-huh.
but he's not the 10th
10th from the Moabite.
Moabite line, which is
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
So that's why I think what the author of Ruth is doing is really specific with
Yes.
mentioning Perez on purpose.
Yes.
Because he is utilizing the idea of the 10th while not being committed to
Right.
the 10 in line specifically.
Yeah.
So he's conveying a theological point more than he's conveying a legal or genealogical point.
Which is really interesting because I feel like we don't tell stories that way.
Yep.
Or I can't think of one off the top of my head just
Yeah.
now. That like when we tell a story, it's pretty encapsulated
Correct.
in itself. You know, we gotta land the plane. We don't tell a story to point you to something else, you know, farther down the road. We just don't really do that.
No, and that's why you need hindsight like this. And again, that's why we don't have to know who wrote the Book of Ruth. We think we know it's probably someone during the time of David, or it could have been someone afterwards. But this is the part of the point, is that when they look back in the story and they understood this history, they recognized the theological force of it. Oh, I see how this is. Oh, isn't that fascinating that it's the 10th from Perez, who also had the same kind of ancestry as the Moabites, and that's the linkage. The linkage is not necessarily the 10 on its face.
Yeah.
The linkage is the other stuff that we've already read about.
Yeah. And I also don't think that the narrator's just being selective of when they say, like, you know, from Perez down, like they tell Boaz and Ruth, like, may you be blessed, like Perez. And, like the people who are witnessing what is happening by the act of the kinsman redeemer and this widowed woman recognize, oh, this is like that. May you be blessed in it. So it's not just selected because, like, well, if we pick where we're landing, well, we just have to.
Then we can make any prophecy work.
10, we'll just count backwards 10 and we'll launch from there. You know, it's not a self-fulfilling thing.
No.
It is doing something.
Yes.
Doesn't it show another definition in the New Testament of hesed is mercy, and it shows God's mercy that he gave this law and said 10 generations, but then it turns out to be 3, and he's like, I can change, and I can, you know, there can.
I can work with this.
Yeah.
And the reason I can work with this is, again, because the linkage is not we're stuck to 10. The linkage is that look at the line of Judah. They need redemption too.
Yeah.
But so does Moab. And so we're going to find both of those by linking them narratively speaking, because the family head that they assign the 10 to happens to be the same kind of formation story as Moab.
This just clicked for me when you said that, like, well, the line of Judah needs redemption too, because he missteps huge with
In a Kinsman Redeemer situation.
In a Kinsman Redeemer situation. But then what is the when oh my gosh, it just left my head. What is his dad's name?
Judah?
Judah's dad's name.
Yep.
Yeah. Why does
Israel.
Israel. Yeah.
Jacob. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin.
I was going to cheat and take the easy
We're talking about the Bible. We know what we're talking about. Jacob, when he's blessing his sons, the blessing he gives Judah points to the ultimate kinsman redeemer.
Correct.
Who will come.
Correct.
And so for him to misstep in a way where he doesn't act in fulfilling that, and then for the trickle down of that, it's too good.
Yeah.
So if it's not too much of an aside, what should Judah have done?
That's a great question.
Should he have provided a husband for her?
And that was the promise.
Yeah.
But the issue was that promise was going to be way too delayed. Who knows how long or how old Selah actually was, which would be the other son.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that's a great question. And I think without the law, we wouldn't know the answer or couldn't know the answer. But because it's pre-law, we don't have a stipulation on what should have happened. It's
pre-law.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like we have an indication because we can read the whole story, right? So we're sitting here thinking, well, how could this have happened any other way than what Judah was trying to do? But the issue is, because it's pre-law, we don't in the midst of the story, Judah. What is Judah supposed to do? That is the question.
Yeah.
So, and Judah is not being directed, even though we know the direction later on via Numbers and Leviticus and all that, Deuteronomy. Judah may not know that in the midst of the situation he's in. So what are the other options that he could have done? Probably something besides offering the son that would be maybe too late for her to even have kids at that point by the time he's marrying her.
And I think that there's, we could speculate on, well, we don't have enough information to know what is it that he could have done better.
Yeah.
But we're given pretty explicitly what it is he did
Correct.
wrong
Yes.
in a taking advantage of and using
Yes.
someone instance.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's too hard. We don't have enough data to answer the question with full certainty. We'd have to speculate. We could have gone, to another tribe and got another.
Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows?
Can't say what was the right thing to do. It's like, well, we were shown what the wrong thing to do is.
That's it. That is the data we have in front of us. And again, Tamar comes out as the good guy in the story.
More righteous than I is what Judah says, and we're like, how?
Okay.
She took it into her hands just as much as Lot's daughters, but they were wrong.
Yes,
Kevin's on it.
They were wrong, and in some way, I don't know that we're supposed to look at her situation and go, she was all right either. Does that make sense? Like I'm not saying
definitely.
I'm not saying that she didn't have a difficult situation into which she did a thing that ends up being the right thing, but I guess what I'm trying to say is she doesn't go into the way she goes about procuring the right thing.
Yeah.
Is probably not the right way.
Definitely. It's not
Which is why we have the Book of Ruth. Because the way that Boaz, who represents Tamar and Judah, does go about it the right way.
Wow.
And the way that Ruth, who represents Moab, does go about it the right way.
Yeah.
That's, I think, the point of the Book of Ruth, is that it's taking both of these stories and it's saying, listen, there's a lot of complex, difficult stuff in here. We're going to do it the right way this time.
That's good.
And that's why I think Perez is picked, and that's why I think, anyway, on and on we could keep repeating that, but that's why I think Perez is specifically picked out by the author.
Wow.
Instead of going back to Abraham, for instance, or whoever. Yeah.
Can I direct us in a...
Well, hold on. Let me yes, in a second. Let me put a panache on what we were saying before this. Okay, in Ruth chapter 4, Boaz confronts the closer relative at the city gates. When the relative realizes that buying the land means he also has to marry Ruth, he backs out. The text notes a slight variation in how the ritual happens here, talking about the unsandaled ritual. Because the unsandaled ritual is this. You walk up to the man in front of the town elders, you pull the sandal off his foot, you spit in his face, and then you say, so shall it be done to the man who does not build up his brother's house. In other words, shame is brought on you. That's the spitting in the face. That's the taking of the sandal. Okay? So, the text notes a slight variation in how the ritual happens here. Because we do have the elders. We have the Kinsman Redeemer present. We don't have Ruth there, though. No one's spitting in anyone's face, which is interesting.
You think because she's a Moabite?
Number one, that would be at least a part of the answer.
Like, she doesn't need to be part of this legal conversation.
Yeah, because she doesn't have rights here.
We're talking property and land and
Correct.
In-house stuff.
In-house stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Of which she's sort of related, but not.
She's the mechanism for it, but we don't need her to decide.
Correct.
Right, got it.
Instead of Ruth spitting in his face and tearing the shoe off, the text says, now this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging. To confirm a transaction, the one drew off his sandal and gave it to the other. So when the Redeemer said to Boaz, buy it for yourself, he drew off his sandal. That's Ruth 4:7. Okay, why the difference? Scholars debate whether the narrator is softening the blow or if the relative took his own shoe off quickly to hand it to Boaz before Ruth could spit in his face. By removing his shoe, the anonymous relative was officially saying, I'm relinquishing my right to walk on Elimelech's land. Boaz, you take the shoe, you take the right to walk there, and you take the responsibility of Ruth.
I would have...
Okay, now hold on, though.
Go.
Because the closer relative was so terrified of ruining his own inheritance and name, again, that's a little bit of speculation.
Yeah.
Okay, because we can look at it two ways, but let's just go with what they're saying here. He refused to help. As a result, the Bible completely wipes his name from history. Again, this is one way of looking at it. Okay, the text literally calls him Poloni Almoni.
That's quite a name.
A Hebrew idiom that translates to Mr. So-and-so or John Doe.
Wow.
Okay? By trying to save his name, he lost it.
Oh.
Meanwhile, Boaz stepped up, okay?
You want to do one more week of Ruth? That's good.
Took the sandal, showed hesed, and his name became immortalized in the lineage of King David and Jesus.
This is a little eerily similar of like he who would preserve his own name,
Yep. We'll
life
lose it.
will lose it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very good.
So I think that's one way of viewing it. The other way of viewing it is that Boaz is redeeming the Kinsman Redeemer as well.
So, okay, I think that's more what my first assumption
Yeah.
is. If he's going to remove his sandal and give it to Boaz,
Correct.
there's like, okay, this should be a conversation that happens with the widow. But now
Correct.
these two men are settling the affair together.
Correct. So I think
Yeah.
there are two good interpretations of this. I opt more for the one that I preached on, which is that I think Boaz is redeeming the whole thing.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just that this dude is getting erased from history because he did a bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what's on offer.
Yeah.
I think what's on offer is that because he hands the sandal off, he recognizes the weight of this. And Boaz, instead of spitting in his face and wrenching it from him, just receives it and is glad to go do the thing with Ruth, as opposed to also then imparting shame.
And Boaz doesn't have to give him a shoe? They're not like, we're square?
No, I think I preached on this wrong, by the
Okay.
way, everybody. I don't think there's no exchanging of shoes. It's just that Boaz receives it from the other man.
Yeah, what does a normal contract look like?
Well, it's apparently in regards of redemption.
Yeah.
Talking about the Kinsman Redeemer role.
But I mean, if they're just buying land, is it okay? Here's my sandal, and
Yeah,
you have
it's a
it
little
now.
ambiguous, but it seems like it's only in regards to redemption.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's a specific redemption element, which means I'm buying back lost family land,
Yeah.
then that's when the sandal happens.
Okay.
So-
I was thinking it was a normal practice.
Yeah,
I'm going to
no.
buy your land. Here's my sandal.
Here's my sandal.
It's
Here you
like-
go. That's how we handshake or whatever. Yeah.
How do they walk around without sandals on?
Yeah, no, and I think there's a lot of forms of covenant. This is just one of them.
Isn't there something about putting your hand?
Yes,
under
put the hand under the thigh, which goes with the former stories we've even been mentioning.
Yeah.
Esau and
That's where that's.
But do you think that there's also let's remove the sandal? I don't think they just picked an article of clothing, as an exchange of like, well, I have your thing, you have mine, we
Right.
made a deal. I think, like you said, that there is some sort of like procreative symbolism going
I
on.
think
But
there's-
then it also makes me wonder, are they supposed to be recognizing like, hey, what we're doing is not just a legal thing, but maybe in a sense, maybe I'm pulling too many things together, but we're a recognition of a holy thing? Because I think about Moses' encounter with
Shoes.
the angel of the Lord and Joshua's encounter with the angel of the Lord. Remove the sandals from your feet.
Right.
I wonder if it's supposed to hold more weight because it is symbolically reminiscent of an encounter that has a name behind it that's worth more than
yeah,
a handshake.
a ritual that indicates my fealty.
Yeah.
That's what I would assume. Taking your shoes off in a place, it's like I'm like when I do it in a home, I take my shoes off to honor the home by not trekking dust in and nastiness.
Right.
There's a purpose behind it that says more than just I don't want this person to clean more tomorrow.
Yeah.
So if
You know.
it doesn't get too graphic, how does that fit into
The sexual innuendo.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's maybe I'm just making something up, but I think it's interesting that the euphemism that indicates sexual activity, which would be the uncovering of the feet, is mirrored in the way that we establish this deal, which is that I'm removing my sandal. You know what I'm trying to say? So there's like an indication in what redemption means. It means that there's going to be this procreative act that's also going to occur.
My intent is to.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, is to uncover my feet with my spouse.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Huh. That whole bit about that being a euphemism really, like, I could hear the brakes like screech in my own brain where I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because then I was like, well, wait, she's going to go and uncover his feet. What's going on here? But I think you did an excellent job
Yes.
of let's not lose sight of what it keeps telling us about these two individuals and the intent and their pursuit, that this doesn't become a scene of promiscuity. It
Correct.
becomes symbolic of, or a reversal of
Yes.
scheming that had happened in the past. I really appreciated that.
Well,
Why does it say spread the corner of your garment?
see, that's
How's that related?
so that's not sexual innuendo. That is talking about. Okay, so another way to translate him would be wing,
Yes.
like the wing of your garment. It's the
Is that,
the
is that related to the tassels?
Yes, and the tassels that would be on the hem,
Tzitzit?
the tzitzit. Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. No, come on,
Really?
Kevin.
Kevin
Yeah,
remembers that?
right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so those
Chosen.
Oh, okay.
the tassels and the hem, they reflect your authority. And so if you were to,
And it represents the law.
and it represents the law, that's the tassels there.
Yes.
So that if you spread the hem of your garment over someone, what you're indicating in that action, what you're saying about that is that I am now bringing you under my authority. Does
So
that make
she's
sense?
not asking, like, bring me in closer for a cuddle. She's not
Correct,
saying,
correct.
like, this. It's none of that. It is,
no.
will you receive me?
Yeah, it's a symbolic act.
Got it.
Yeah, it's a symbolic act. And it's again talking. If you point forward to like what Seth's sermon was about, for instance,
Yeah.
that's why it is that the woman's reaching out for the hem of Jesus' garment, because she knows that if I can touch his authority or the symbol of his authority, then I can find healing.
Right.
Because in a sense she's asking for him to cover her, to bring her in, to heal her, to make her whole.
And in the Chosen, she points out that I didn't touch you, I just touched her.
Yeah,
It's like, you're not unclean.
correct. Which is also man.
Intriguing.
The Chosen does that portion well, because that is what's going on as well.
Yeah.
There is if you touched his body, that would be different than touching his clothing. Yeah, because the ritual purity would be different, but or the need to become ritually pure again would be different than if his body was touched versus his hem was touched. So what's interesting about the hymn though is that you'll keep reading about stuff like I'm trying to remember what passage it is in Isaiah where it talks about how God will bring the nation of Israel back under his wing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to lift you up like on wings like eagles. There's a bunch of wing language throughout the Psalms and the prophets. It would be appropriate at times to link those two words in our minds, hem and wing. The idea is not just that you're under authority; it's that you're also safe. You're brought back. Like you're held.
Yeah.
So like there's a growing portrait of how this word gets utilized, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And I think it all indicates God's hesed. Comes back to that. So the reason I even brought up the sexual innuendo stuff is because I've seen articles and TikToks and YouTubes where people who haven't really studied it like fully, I would say,
Turn into a scandal.
correct.
Yeah.
They're and then they'll use that as a launch pad to say this is why premarital sex is okay. Mm-hmm. Because look at Ruth and Boaz, they did that, and I just don't think that that's the right conclusion to draw from the text. Nor do I think the text is indicating that. I think what the text is doing is actually the opposite. It's heightening the tension of the moment by utilizing that sexual language to then point out that they don't even do that. To show that how righteous they actually are.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to kind of like for our for people who will be on TikTok, which
Right.
we've got a lot of millennials in our crowd and younger, and so I wanted to kind of preclude that conclusion.
Yeah. Well done. I like it.
It's a really interesting part of the story, and again, if we're reading it in like its ancient context, we're like, wait a minute, I thought these were noble people.
Yeah.
Like we're supposed to be asking these questions.
Well, that's what happened.
She's a Moabite after all.
In like real time on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
I was like, what? It wasn't on my radar. I don't watch TikTok.
Yes, there you go. You're better for it. So, anyway, what do we got next? I don't even know where we are in the story.
I was going to ask if we could take the term hesed and the Kinsman Redeemer and go off of what you said of the Book of Ruth through the lens of Jesus. Realizes, okay, it shows the blueprint of the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So it's like all pointing, and the story itself can be parallel to Jesus, right?
Yeah, I agree. So, and the way that I mean that is the way that like Paul would later talk about the gospel, which is that it's not just the gospel being the story of Christ, culminating in his death, burial, and resurrection, the forgiveness of our sins, and the promise of new life through the resurrection. So that being the gospel, what Paul is at pains, it seems to do, particularly in the book of Ephesians, particularly in the book of Galatians, as well as in Romans. Maybe those three the most, but he does it elsewhere. I'm trying to think if he does it in Colossians as well. But anyway, he's at pains to express what this mystery is of the gospel. And the mystery is that the redemption that God is working is not just for his chosen people.
Yeah.
It's also
Right.
for the Gentile.
And that's shown in Ruth being a Moabite.
Yeah, like this is the example par excellence. I mean, like there is not another book that quite has, well, the book's title is a Moabite woman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you couldn't get further away from God's covenant family as far as identity goes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Particularly with the history that we're dealing with coming through the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
We're coming off of the history of Moses telling the people that because of the sexual seduction of these women, Moabite women, the Moabites are not going to be allowed into the family of God. And then now we're getting the opposite story of that 2 books later. I think it's a fascinating move by the ancient collaborators of Scripture and the writers here to point out that this is God's heart and has been God. And of course, the New Testament's going to pick up on this theme big time. That this has been the point all along, is that Israel's not just chosen. That's it. They're not just chosen. It's not just the Israelite who can receive the redemption of God. It's anyone who would give their hesed back in response to God's hesed.
Yeah.
So Ruth is like a proto-gospel, proto-evangelion.
Yes, thank you. So good.
I knew you wanted to hear that or say it. Yeah, it's a the evangelion being the good news.
Okay.
So it's a proto-gospel. So before the gospel is fully announced through Christ, we have a story that maps right onto God's heart, which is that I don't just want the Jews, I want all nations. I want everyone to know me.
Which makes like Ruth such a great book as far as like, well, who's your hero character in here? Like, is it Ruth? Is it Boaz? Like, no, it's God.
It's God.
It's God.
But he's never mentioned.
Yeah. Not as far as like he's doing a thing.
Right.
Or
yeah.
this is an aid, which is so different than the other books, which is so fascinating.
Yeah, we just got done with like Joshua seeing the angel of the Lord and all this stuff with the judges and
Yeah, there's no Christophanies.
Yeah.
No, not in here. In fact, God's only mentioned by, I think it's Naomi and then the other people, the other Israelites. I'm not even sure that Ruth and Boaz might mention God.
But Ruth does a direct quote.
Yes, she does a direct quote. But I guess what I'm trying to say is
he doesn't arrive on the scene and do something, but it does pointedly point to him.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
To his law, to his way, to his goodness. Absolutely.
And towards David, which we know where all that goes.
Yes. Yeah. So that is what's startling about the book, is that number one, it's titled after a rebel nation. Like, it's titled after and it's a woman. It's not the Book of Boaz.
Yeah.
You know, it could have easily been called the Book of Boaz.
That is a very interesting point. Had never considered it, and why not? But I think the why not is because, well, what is it that God is trying to accomplish through this book? Yeah.
Right.
That's a very good point.
It's in fact, so because we have the exclusion of the Moabites, the Book of Ruth is indicating to us that God's heart is inclusion. All people can be brought in. But again, it has to be the right way.
That kind of makes me think of when Jesus made the whip and went into the temple.
Yeah.
People don't understand why he got so mad. He was in the court of the Gentiles.
Yeah.
And they were using it as a place to buy things and all that stuff. He's like, people are supposed to come in and see God in the temple. Other outside people, not just Gentiles, but they had become so phobic of other people that they weren't accepting the Gentiles.
Which actually again links to the same thing that we've been talking about in Ephesians chapter 2, which is what Paul says, that the two men have become one, and that there's this dividing wall of hostility that stands between the Jew and the Gentile. Well, there's a literal stone that had we found it. We have this pictures of this stone.
Cornerstone.
Not a cornerstone. That would be really cool.
Oh.
But it was a stone that had an inscription on it, and it would be set on the 3-foot wall that was in between the Gentile court and the Jewish court. And the inscription said something to the tune of, "Any Gentile who enters into this, your blood will be on your own head." So it was there was literally a dividing stone or wall of hostility between the Jews and the Gentiles in God's temple. Yeah. Now, it was set up that way, maybe not the inscription, but it was set up that way that there are successive courts, that there's a Gentile court, a Jewish court, so on and so forth.
A court of the women.
A court of the women, absolutely. So it is set up that way on purpose. However, the startling revelation of the mystery of the gospel is that Jesus does away with that.
Yeah.
And it seems like Paul is pointing out that stone particularly to talk about how the Gentiles are now included into God's temple as a result of Christ.
That's why the curtain in the Holy of Holies tears when he dies.
A lot of bingo.
Yeah. That's
God's presence symbolic. Well, and so you've nailed it on the head, Kevin. That during the time of Passover, when all the Gentiles would come to worship Yahweh, and not just them, lots of people, but the Gentiles would come. The place of the because they're coming from so far, they're not necessarily carrying a goat with them, because you have to have an unblemished, lamb for the sacrifice. So you're not necessarily carrying a lamb with you from wherever you are. You're going to buy it there at the temple because we can verify this is an unblemished lamb. So the Gentile court then was filled up with, to accommodate the massive people that would come, up to 400,000 people could fit on the Temple Mount. What we're told is that 1 million people would come during Passover.
Goodness.
So the courts are already at capacity, as it is. So the only place that they could put this marketplace, for lack of a better term, is in the Gentile courts. So when Jesus comes and he's hot and heavy and he's flipping all the tables, I think there's probably some shade of he's frustrated at maybe some bad
the money thing.
Some money collection. I'm sure he's upset with that.
Yeah.
But the greater thing he's upset about, because he doesn't quote the fullness of I think it's prophet Jeremiah, that my house shall be called a house of prayer.
Yeah.
So he stops there. But the rest of the quote of Jeremiah is for all nations. And the rest of the passage goes on to talk about how the Gentiles are going to be brought in through what God does. And so it's not really that you've made it a den of robbers, right?
Yeah.
That's where people get the money thing. And I think that's probably in there. But I think the bigger thing he's frustrated is that the Gentiles can't experience God.
Doesn't he say something about it's so noisy from all the bleating of sheep?
That's just what we know happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that, like you said, it's supposed to be a house of prayer. How do you pray?
You can't. Bingo. Well, you can if you're a Jew.
Right.
Because it's nice and quiet inside there.
Yeah.
That's the point.
That's his,
Makes Jesus, so intense. Like, if I think about, movies and shows depicting it, and he's, flipping some tables, and there's, 40 people or whatever. If it's at capacity...
Everyone would have seen this.
This is Jesus driving out, how many people?
It would have been a big commotion.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Like think of a medical emergency at a concert or something like that. Everyone moves to the side. You know what I mean? Everyone gets out the way. That's what it would have looked like at the temple. They would have been shocked.
Is that dividing stone that says that thing you said?
Some kind of inscription about blood on your own head.
Is that a thing that in the construction of the temple, here's how I want you to build it, all these courts, that's not part of it, right? It doesn't sound like that. That's a human invention.
That's a human invention.
Causes a lack of life.
Yeah, and I'm trying to find the dividing wall.
Wouldn't there have been
here's a picture of it right there.
Temple?
Wow.
There's the inscription.
Wouldn't there be temple guards keeping Gentiles out?
There would have been social pressure and a recognition of the law. Now, there were temple guards, and they would have probably responded if Jews had begun to say, "You're a Gentile, you're not allowed in."
Yeah.
But again, that's why they had an inscription on the dividing wall.
Like what Paul is accused of, bringing a Gentile in.
That's right. And everyone freaks out about that. But again, the dividing wall of hostility has been removed in Christ. So yeah, Ruth is a story of inclusion via God's hesed. And we could say his kindness too, because that's another big theme of the story.
When I looked up hesed in the New Testament, it pointed to Ephesians 3:18, actually going to 17. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all saints, to grasp how wide, how long, how deep, and how high is the love of Christ, and know that this love surpasses knowledge, and that you may be filled with measure of all the fullness of God. That kind of explains the hesed.
And it's interesting that prayer, Kevin, comes right after Ephesians 3:6. This is the mystery, that through the gospel the Gentiles are heirs together with Israel, members together of one body, and shares together in the promise in Christ Jesus.
Cool.
Tidily done, Kev.
What else you got about Ruth?
I think we talked off everything that I've been chewing on. Kevin, you got anything else?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've been racking my brain about the symmetry of this story, because obviously you have the Redeemer of Israel, who would be David in his time, born in Bethlehem. He's a shepherd, born through this story of the Moabite being redeemed, as well as Naomi, which we didn't really get to her. But I'm interested by the symmetry of it all, because then when the final shepherd comes, the good shepherd, he comes and is born in the same town, and the heralds are shepherds.
Yeah.
And I just think the symmetry of all of that is something supernatural.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't make this kind of story up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
That detail would be too hard, I think, to pull that thread on.
Yeah.
Other than God calling that shot, a little bit later in the story. But yeah, I think it's really interesting that probably the same fields where the shepherds are out there watching their sheep are likely the same fields that Ruth is gleaning.
Yeah.
As she's being provided for in these fields via God's law, and now God's law is finding its completion through Christ, announced to these shepherds, who are then going to go tell everybody that the Messiah has come. I think there's something really powerful to say about that. Also, Elder Seth hit me with the idea that Naomi, so if Ruth stands for the Gentiles in this story, Boaz stands for Christ in this story as the Redeemer. Well, who does Naomi stand for? I think she stands for the nation of Israel.
Oh, that tracks. Okay, yeah.
And that both the nation of Israel and the Gentiles are redeemed by the Kinsman Redeemer.
Yeah.
And that Naomi, like the nation of Israel, runs off to a foreign place.
Yeah. Oh, come on, Seth.
Finds provision somewhere else, finds hope and, you know what I'm trying to say, all those things somewhere else, but then is brought back in. But even when they're brought back in, still complaining, feeling like God has abandoned them.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is still a story of exiles.
Yeah. Like you said, you can't make it up or pull things in. It's too good.
This was the other thing I wanted to say. I had a throwaway line.
Okay.
It's not really a throwaway line for the discerning, who are kind of thinking ahead of where this whole story is going. Not just the story of Ruth, but like the whole biblical story. I said this line in the sermon. Ruth adopts the identity of an exile so that she can be redeemed.
Yeah.
That's going to be a really important through thread in the rest of the story. She takes on the identity of one who leaves her homeland, one who leaves her gods behind, in order to cling to Yahweh, and she goes into a foreign place that she has no prospects in. I mean, she's literally living on the welfare system of their day. That's the gleaning of the fields. That's why God set up that law in the first place. That you need to have some margin left over to help those who are less fortunate. So she's literally in the welfare system. That's how she's subsisting. She has no identity, no ability, and she has no prospects really moving forward. Where was I headed with this? Devin, help me.
She took the position of an exile. Yeah.
She's an exile in every
Yeah.
like way you could think about that.
Yeah.
And so in her adoption of that identity, that's where God meets her. So even though she's in the promised land, she and Naomi both are kind of having a wilderness experience.
Yes.
They were out in the wilderness, if you want to put it that way, because that's a part of where they actually did their wilderness wandering, was around Moab, because they weren't allowed to go through. So anyway, there's all kind of through threads here, is I guess what I'm trying to point out.
I think there's some solidly pointing back things that are happening
Yes.
with, who represents what and all that. But then also this book should be very informative to the nation moving forward.
Yes.
As far as, well, what do they do when they go into exile?
And we've been, yes,
And there's going to be
exile,
pointed instruction for it.
and what should they have been doing all along? Because we've noticed from the story so far, and this is just pinging off my brain at this moment, that when Abraham did well, like when Abraham was a faithful covenant partner, he blessed the nations around him.
Yeah.
And that's like, I can't remember who it was, Abimelech or someone like that came, or one of the commanders,
Yeah.
and came and said something to the tune of, "We know that you're a righteous man,
Right.
that God's with you.
Yeah.
We see that. It's obvious. Can we be in partnership with one another?"
Yeah.
What's interesting in this story, though, is that it's Ruth who is calling that into action.
Yeah.
But she does that as a result of living righteously, being a woman of noble character. And it turns out that even though you're in exile, even if you adopt the identity of exile, there is still the opportunity and ability to live for the Lord, which we've seen through the wilderness narrative as well. So I think it's I don't know, there's all kind of ways that you could telegraph or put some kind of typology into this story. But I think that's going to be a really important thread moving forward, is that Ruth adopts the identity of exile. Naomi inherits it, whereas Ruth
That's very
takes it
interesting.
on.
So is that related to Jeremiah telling the Israelites
100%.
that they should not worry about where they're going and they should live in the land and settle in?
But then also, I think more pointedly, what is it that the Christian is doing when they take up an identity in Christ?
Yep.
Okay, expound on that.
Well, we're going to get to this in the sermon series at some point, but I think what Jesus has on offer for us is not a triumphal kind of, again, nation state,
Yeah.
that kind of chosenness. I think what Jesus has on offer for us is to take on an identity of an exile who lives for the Lord. And even though Ruth is out of her homeland, she is still faithful to Yahweh. She could have just merely adopted the law. She could have merely been on the welfare system. Her and Naomi would have had enough food to live, but they would have not thrived or prospered. So what happens as a result, though, of her faithfulness to Yahweh, and not in a passive sense, but in an active sense, she actively takes on the burden of feeding her mother-in-law. She actively takes on the burden of doing the work to go glean and all those things. She actively takes on the identity of now being in God, if you want to put it that way, in Yahweh, by saying, your people will be my people, your God will be my God. So by doing that, God is able to work with her to redeem her story, but she had options. She could have just not gone with Naomi, or she could have, when she got to Israel, she could have just settled there with whatever happened. And I think that those are the options that are present to us today as Christians. We can either go with the place that we live and operate, whether it's the United States or wherever you live, whatever country or continent you're a part of.
Yeah.
You could be a part of the world system as it is, or you could just kind of lie down and or oppose it even, like Moab would be in opposition to Israel, like in a large sense, even if they weren't actively that way. But you could either oppose Yahweh's way, or you could, kind of map onto it, but kind of, not at the same time, or be passive about that. Well, those aren't our only two options, we find out. Our third option is to adopt the identity of an exile and still live for Yahweh in the midst of my exilic posture or state.
And that's what makes the gospel transcendent over nations, ethnic identity, and time. Because if I was going to say that, like, well, I happen to live in a place that is very accepting of a Christian culture or whatever, or if you were under the belief that whatever nation you're living in is in pursuit of trying to, live a Christian lifestyle or whatever, if that's what you're convinced of or not, or whatever, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be in a particular nation that affirms
Correct.
To still be in Christ, or you don't have to be at a particular moment in history that would affirm. It means that the gospel transcends all those things if you adopt the posture to live in exile wherever it is you are, which I think
Correct.
is where we are.
I think the way you said it is the right way to say it. To adopt an exilic mentality and identity wherever I live.
Yeah.
So whether I'm in a nation that affirms or approves, or I'm in a nation that would that I would receive corporal punishment for being a Christian within, my options are to capitulate to the culture or to rebel against it. Those are two obvious options, but those are very worldly options.
Yeah.
The non of this world option would be to
That's what I was going to say. In the world, but not of it.
bingo. So I think that phrase specifically is an exilic phrase. I think that's an exile's phrase. So I think Jesus is using exile language to describe what the kingdom of God is like.
Okay.
That's probably enough of a preview. But you're absolutely right, Kevin, that whatever Jeremiah said to the exiles,
Yeah.
Hey guys, we're going to be here a while.
It's another one of those moments where we've done this,
Yes,
we're going to do this.
correct.
Yeah.
And it's going to come back in. This is where the series is headed.
Okay.
Is what does it mean to adopt an exile's identity? Yeah. And we're getting the first picture of it here with Ruth.
Which we were talking about this maybe 2 weeks ago. That Ruth kind of is this hard gear shift where we're launching forward hard.
Yes.
No, not just because it ends with a genealogy that goes forward rather than backward.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, we've got to get. That's where we're going to head next in the series.
So,
We're not going to slow walk Samuel. I'm actually gonna bring back up our covenant framework that we started the series with, that probably everyone forgot about. That the Bible is broken down into chapters,
right?
Because that's how God has chosen to relate with with the world, is via covenant. And so we're going to bring back up the chapter thing that we've been using, the analogy we've been using, and we're going to get to the next covenant, which would be the establishment of the kingdom through King David. So then we have King David's covenant, but then we are actually going to go into exile next. And that's where we're going to camp out for a while.
Are you going to bring up how people wanted a king, but God told them they shouldn't?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm going to point out that Saul, the reason they like Saul is because he's tall.
Yeah. And good looking.
And good looking. Which has something...
not just good looking. They said better looking than everybody.
Which is very funny. He's like a donkey farmer. Like that's where we first meet Saul. He's like he's looking for his father's donkeys.
Yeah.
It's like, so yeah, Saul, who is tall, is who they pick. And then we get the opposite description of David, who is ruddy and handsome.
Yeah.
But we're not told he's tall. In fact, what we're told is that God doesn't look at the outward appearance; He looks at the heart.
Right.
So you have kind of an opposite thing going on there, and so that's where we're headed next. Why is David chosen in the first place, or where does David even emerge in the story? A lot of that comes because of the story of Goliath. So, in contrast to a tall king, David kills a giant. Which is again a whole fascinating thread we're gonna have to pull on, but I'm gonna try to do First and Second Samuel and First and Second Kings in like 3-4 weeks.
Okay.
Because the main thrust is getting to David, like we said today, one of the great, it's like the best we can do outside of Eden. And even then, it's not all right.
Aren't they mostly narrative?
Yes, they're mostly narrative. The next several books coming up, and then there's this hard pause in the way our Bibles are formed. Right after First and Second Kings comes First and Second Chronicles, which technically are much
just a repeat.
Yes, but technically they're much late. They're written later on. They're like a summation. If you were reading chronologically, they're supposed to be the last two things you read before you read the book of Matthew. They're like chronologically speaking.
The time they were written?
Yes, chronologically speaking, when they're written, they're supposed to be the last things you read before you jump into the New Testament. So yeah, after the narratives of the Samuels, the Kings, and the Chronicles, then you have this hard interruption of Psalms, Proverbs, in the way our Bibles are formed.
Okay.
Which doesn't lend itself to our understanding, because what we miss is that the prophets are all happening in the time period of the kings. We miss that.
Right.
So that's why I want to go quickly through the kingdom, so that we can jump into the prophets and talk a little more slowly and carefully about why Isaiah is talking this way, why Jeremiah is talking this way, and so on and so forth.
Neat.
So that's the next path. It'll be the way of exile.
I'm very excited.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Cutting Room Floor. If you have any questions or want to know more about what we discussed, send an email to Church on the Rock. Like and subscribe to receive notifications for any videos we post. May God bless your study of His Word.